And I know your brains are thoroughly saturated. And we've taken that into consideration in terms of how we want to present this aspect of Steve's teaching. Okay, you can call it the after party. You can call it, well, call it what you like. Here's what we're going to do. And it's a lot of stuff. I've squeezed 19 pounds of in a 2-pound bag. But I'm so excited with Steve's method. It's just not even, it's silly. It's downright silly. So great to be in an environment where we're actually trading a system that works. I know a lot of us have been around a few various locations and, you know, as Steve said, chewing the same dirt. But as we are all experiencing, those that have put in the time, this is the shizzle, or however we can say it. This stuff works. All right, so I've taken Steve's slide from his last section, which actually segues perfectly into this section. Really happy about that. And that's market makers create sentiment and act against it. That statement will mean more to you in time. All you new guys, welcome aboard. It's great to have you. Hello, all my friends. I know everybody pretty much in here. Peter, Charlotte, Randy, new guy, Walter, Jivan, Marielle. Good to see you guys. So what we're going to go through are 5 sections. And the first section is Inducing Sentiment, Part 1. What does that really mean? Okay. And then we're going to talk about trading from the extremes, which is the high-low drill. Then we're going to take another look into the inducing process, a little deeper, a little darker look into the laboratory of these guys. Then we're going to get into some strategic thinking, which involves risk management. Up until the point you really know this stuff, then, as Steve says, the stops become somewhat irrelevant. You keep them for wild news and unusual spikes, but you do end up hitting pretty close to 100. And then finally, we'll finish it off with a motion flashcard or two of some ideal setups. All right, so let's get rocking and rolling. And I'd like to welcome you all to the Flea Circus, the smallest show on earth, where we observe the market makers and all their trained fleas. And our new statement is loyal to the pattern, not the pair. Okay, I'm actually not being facetious or funny here, although it is a little weird at first sight. Jim, what are you doing? Anyway, there's method behind the madness. Again, we're taking you guys out of the charts, out of a lot of this mathematical stuff. I want to give you guys a view of where and how the market makers treat everything on the back side of the screen. Okay, so let's look into this for a second. Okay, did you know that fleas are trainable? I had no idea fleas were trainable until I heard a lecture by a genius about education. And here's Professor Heckler and his trained flea circus. Interesting stuff. Trained fleas, Acme Miniature Circus. Positively no dogs will be admitted. Okay, Josh, sorry, you're not invited. All right, so these guys are actually training fleas. Here's my favorite one. All right, and we're talking about market sentiment. We're talking about human nature. We're talking about all the things that lead to why we are subjectable to the moves the market makers do to take our money. And this is interesting. Professor Lecontis, wonderful flea circus, must be seen to be believed. I know this print is kind of small. Patronized by royalty, can't read the second word, and clergy, nobility and clergy. Patronized by nobility, royalty, and clergy. Well, that's an interesting key right there. And why is that? All right. The reason is, going back to the Roman collegia, now these are the first colleges, fleas were trained as a novelty and for teaching and demonstrating crowd behavior and crowd control. So in truth, some tools on market makers are over 2,000 years old. Okay, this is pretty intense stuff. I'll read through it quickly. Membership in the various colleges of priests, including the College of Pontiffs, was usually an honor offered to members of politically powerful, wealthy families. Where have we heard that before? Membership was for life, except for the vestigial virgins, whose term was 30 years. In the early republic, only patricians could become priests. However, the Lex Augustana, can't really pronounce that, in 300 BC, opened up college to plebeians. We've heard plebes, right? What is a plebe? The plebe was a general body of free landowning Roman citizens, middle class, you can call them, who were distinguished from slaves or capitis censi, which is a name given to slaves in ancient Rome. And believe it or not, Nero, who was a Roman Empire, was born a plebe, meaning he was a middle class, and then his success was not uncommon. Approximately 30% of emperors were plebes. Anyway, these guys trained fleas to demonstrate to each other how to throw false moves. All right? So digging a bit deeper into it, we can see these fleas are pulling carts and various things. Completely insane. I had no idea this stuff existed. And this flea is saying, let's follow that fast candle spike, pulling this little cart. I mean, I busted when I saw this stuff. I started laughing. All right, so this is where we get to the psychology stuff that we're interested in terms of trading. Naturally, if a wild flea is put into a jar, it will easily jump out. In fact, a flea can jump 150 times his own size. But if a flea trainer puts a flea in a jar with a lid on it, the flea will, of course, begin to jump, but after a while, the flea will become tired of banging his head against the lid, will lower his jump. Once the flea becomes accustomed to the fact that it cannot escape, an amazing thing happens. You can remove the lid, and the flea will only jump as high as where the lid once was. He will never escape the jar because his mind has been reprogrammed to only jump so high. All right, and these are Roman Collegia, little market maker effects guy going way back. All right, another Acme miniature flea circus. Amazing, there's tons of this stuff. I had no idea about it. And this flea says, shh, I've just converted my day trade to a swing trade. Drawdown is now an investment. Flip that over. This flea took Steve's class. All the money in his little barrel there. Okay. He went the other direction and practiced the high-low drill. Absolutely, without question, my favorite part of Steve's training. However, for you new guys, I want to introduce you to my famous mistake that led to probably the biggest reason I had such an epiphany quickly with Steve's material, because sometimes being on the wrong side of a trade can be the best education. So we're looking at the S&P 500 index, and we're going back to 2007. Okay, summer of 2007, I had some extra money. I wanted to invest in the stock market. Subprime mortgages start blowing up, and all the technical analysis points to a big drop in the stock market. Wedges and all this kind of stuff. All right, instead of getting in here at the highs, I wait. I do the so-called wise or prudent thing. I wait for some momentum in my direction to validate my short play. Guys, does this sound familiar? Besides, the best traders only trade from the middle 85%, and no one can pick the outer 15% of the range. Or so I was told. Okay? Okay, price starts to come down. Okay, I see good momentum. I have let the market prove to me it's going to continue short. I have the market performance on my side. It has validated my short. This all should sound really familiar to you guys. Okay, I buy a few hundred put options and SPY futures, having no clue about risk management. That's another side of it. But no shortage of enthusiasm. Countrywide just blew up. I know the stock market is going to tank. I'm all in short, baby. Immediately pullback. Ouch. I don't know if you guys have traded options before, but they're just brutally leveraged. So a small move like this just probably knocked down about 20-30%. I think I put in about 25 grand. So it probably brought me down to about 18, 17 grand overall. And now, of course, I went all in like a dummy. And then I say, oh, look, it comes back. And I can remember this pullback like it was yesterday. Look, it came back. I'm not down that much. I'm holding short. Okay, we've all been there too. Here it comes back down. I'm down only 2,000 or 3,000. I feel really good. I'm like, you know what? I'll just shut the terminal. I'll walk away. I know this thing's going to work out. You know, it just has to go this way. Oof. Frick this, I'm out. My account went down to like about 5 grand. From 30 grand to 5 grand in no time. I'm looking at the chart. I couldn't take it anymore as this thing was going up. It was just painful, rolling over, putting the laptop on in bed all night long, watching this thing. So it was a melt up. It bled up. Previous to Steve's teaching, I didn't know what this was. It only went up just the least bit more, and guess what? It started turning around in the same direction I was supposed to go to begin with. All right? By that Christmas, I would have been seriously rich. And then, of course, by the next year, I would have been filthy rich, in which case I may never have had Steve's class. All right, so mistakes are good sometimes. We got a comment here by Byron. I lost $155,000 when I bet my whole account on gold puts for 2 weeks of time. Good Lord. Well, I only lost 30, but, 25 technically. I blew the other 5 very quickly doing chase trading. All right, it's all been there. Okay, so let's look at the high-low drill, which Steve's mentor had him do, and then we'll deeply look into why it hurts to do it at first. And what I just went through with that chart is exactly why it hurts. Okay? So let's take a look at the high-low drill. Of course, we're out on a driving range here. I use this slide because in golf, part of the game is actually developing your skills outside of the game, which is another theme of this presentation, is how we can become better traders by taking specific elements and practicing them, rehearsing them on the easy field of perhaps a driving range or a putting green, somewhere where everything's not on the line. We're not worrying about next month's rent. We're able to actually work on a stroke. We can work on how we address the ball. We can work on how our left hand pulls, the various technicalities of golf. All right, so, and yes, at first when you do the high-low drill, it will feel like this. You'll feel like a little mouse that just crawled out of its hole, and there's the cheese sitting there, and oh my God, am I supposed to take the cheese? That thing's going to hurt and chop my head off, right? So that's normal. So let's look at the high-low drill technically for what it is. It's in demo. You get in front of the screen between the hot hours that Steve has already talked about. I've stretched the New York time a little bit here. As people know, I like to take the CAD trades, and a lot of times they'll show up a little later than the 11 a.m. New York session. So here we have 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's 700 to 1000 GMT, or it's probably 600 to 900 now, I think. All right, so we are also looking at the window between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And all we're doing is we're trying to enter trades at or near the high or low of day. We use a 10-pip stop loss. That's real tight. Not worrying about 7 pips above the high or 23 pips above the high. This is a drill. Okay, this is just to get ourselves feeling limber and loose, and so we can take their money. All right, so we use a 10-pip stop loss and a 50-pip take profit. And we make multiple attempts until we catch the high a day or low a day, then let the trade run and take profit. And my favorite pairs to do this in London are the GBP USD, the Euro USD, and in New York I like the GBP USD and USD CAD. Of course, this works on any pair. If you have an affinity for a certain pair, by all means, do it there. But if you're looking for clear guidance, if you're looking for how I went about doing it, this is how I've done it. All right? And I'm going to show this slide again because this stuff is so weird, so out of the box, so not normal, and Steve's not delusional, he's actually onto something, that most people truly forget what they've heard. What do you mean enter at the top of the day? What do you mean enter at the low of the day? Jim, can you tell me what the high-low drill is again? It's nuts. I've said it 3 times, 4 times in front of people, and there's always a hand that goes up. Hey, Jim, what's that high-low drill again? I mean, and I'm going to go through all the psychological stuff, or portions of the psychological stuff as to why that is, and why we just don't even want to see the definition itself. All right, sorry about this table banging my mic. All right. A key part of the high-low drill is to decouple from trading and to just observe price action. I'm not sure if he's still here, but Abo is someone who is an example of observing price action. All right, I think the story is he sat for 6 months and literally observed price according to his basic playbook and watched it occur before he decided to put any money on. All right, and demo trading the real market is the optimal trade simulator. Everybody's heard of simulators. They work in terms of developing strategy offline. I can understand that. But there are skills you will get from trading the real-time market that you will not get from a trade simulator. It has to do with the speed of the candles, because the timings of the candles will be observed and internalized. When I say internalized, that means that you begin to have a second nature look at it. That means that you're basically picking it up on a deep level, and you'll see something happen and you'll know that's a false move. It just has to do with the timing. There are probably a ton of things that are not explainable, but when you do this drill, you will experience what I consider is the real crown jewel of Steve's method. All right, and the entire theme of it is the false move is fast. All right, that's always it. Slow, steady move is the true trend. Steve talked about that. So hour per hour spent in front of the live market is time better spent than using trade simulators. We went through that. And I would suggest you take the opportunity to do it alone and then group up afterwards. A lot of people get on Skype and they share and they pal around. They say, oh, I see this, I see that. That's cool. But really, you want to have your time on the driving range really peeling balls into the distance here. You want to be able to pop these in at the high of day and the low of day. Right, that's the essence of this drill. No one can do it for you. No one can really call it out. Although I've done a little bit of Skyping with somebody who will pop a number in and almost compete with each other. It's kind of fun, but he's also at my skill level. So you always want to group with people that are at your skill level in terms of getting on trade groups. All right, there's whole science to that as well, but we're not dealing with that. All right, always have a couple demo accounts where you plan to aggressively trade, absolutely forgetting about equity gains and losses. Okay? You were looking for executed entry. You want to tighten it down. You want to get as loose with that as possible, and you can't do that when you're looking over your shoulder saying, well, how am I doing? Oh, what did I do yesterday? And your wife comes up and says, oh, how's your equity? Did we buy that new car yet? You can't. That and the high-low drill do not go together. You need to keep that separate. Oops, jumping ahead here. Okay, a huge concept. Whoops, jumping a little too quickly. Sorry about that. Okay, we want to keep gains and losses out of it long enough that you can get skilled at putting entries near high of day and low of day. This is the ultimate high drill here. And a huge concept you'll discover within yourself by actually doing the high-low drill will be that a deep part of you will feel like you are putting a trade on going the exact wrong way. Huge, huge point. The big trading myth we all start out with, which the high-low drill will compel us to face and detox, hopefully, is that we feel we need to see performance and momentum before we can put a trade on. So contrary to our emotions or social engineering, the safest place to put a trade on from is as close to high or low of day as possible. Okay? Yet the average trader who hasn't faced this behavioral engineering within themselves will freeze up, even in demo when at these areas, because there's nothing to grab onto and it feels like the exact wrong thing to do. If you feel this way while doing the high-low drill, you're making progress, you're onto something, it's normal. Okay, and that's because mammals are hardwired to follow the herd. Okay, wildebeests especially. Evolution has engineered the gregarious urge as a form of personal security. Don't stick out, be with the pack, look for what everyone else is doing, and follow the leader. It can be incredibly uncomfortable to veer from the herd. Market makers play with traders day in and day out by tapping into their innate instincts. Okay, we've got Wildebeest Inc., which are the market makers. They end up with all your money. And these guys are eating you up left and right. And he says, I'll have wildebeest for dinner. And the little guy jumping into the pond here says, oh, but the momentum felt so right. Okay, you can actually see animals doing things just like traders do. And it just becomes ever more real that there indeed is an interplay between market makers and traders. Right? This is the next evolution of the wildebeest. It's called the Solitarius maximus. This one did the high-low drill. That's why he ran from the pack. Okay, so we want you to jump away from the pack, get going the opposite direction, especially when you see them piling in. Right? So, again, refresher of what the high-low drill is. Again, you get in front of the screen between the hot hours. You try to take entries at or near high or low of day. Use a very small stop loss, 10 pips, and a large take profit of 50 pips. Make multiple attempts until you catch the high of day or low of day, then let the trade run to take profit. Okay, good stuff. All right, high-low skills offer the safest place to establish a position. And again, experience is going to teach you that. Once the high-low skill is developed, the trader can eventually use it all along a trend run. And that's a beautiful thing. The skill developed by this experience will also give one a refined ability to exit at extremes and thus maximize gains. Eventually, the high-low skill becomes high-low at intraday level skill. What do we mean by that? Okay, this is a single day, 5 p.m., 3 false moves to the high, there's an M formation, comes down and makes its first intraday level 1, where we'll call this a push 1, and then we have push 2. This would be on a 15-minute chart, and push 3, and then finally a W coming back into the range to complete the day. The high-low skill will eventually get you to the point that not only can you pick off the highs at the M and the lows at the W, but as they chop inside, you can be grabbing high of range plays that are either a scale in or a new entry coming down into your next consolidation area. So you're going to be picking off highs up here to go short, highs up here to go short, And as well, you'll be able to use that to exit with. Right? So these are intraday pushes. You'll be able to trade those with precision. And this eventually gets you to the point where you have virtually no drawdown trades. And it's something that is wonderful when you can get a scale-in sequence. You're scaling in and none of your trades are in drawdown. It feels pretty amazing. It's possible with this stuff. This is a trade I took today. I was only up for the New York session. Super clean chart here. But this is actually a wide multi-day W. And I got in on the second leg here and basically used the high-low skill to pop this exit. It only gave me 38 pips. This is the Euro CAD on a 15-minute chart. All right, 38 pips in New York is cool by me, no problem. But this exit is an illustration of high-low skill. This is sort of the flip side to what you learn by picking your entries. You can also use it to get the exits. We'll jump out at a chart we presented in the DMR last night. Called this a reset. Basically, I saw it coming back down and dealing with this area and then taking back off, and then it's now forming a nice wide level 3 to the downside, it looks like. However, at this point, last night was our DMR, and literally, I'm not sure, 1, 2, 3, about 12 hours ahead of time, planned this trade out, woke up this morning, had coffee, saw these pins break the average daily range low, so your ADR fired, all right, and it came nicely to this previous pin, didn't quite come down to there. Market makers didn't want to let go of the volume. They had trapped short here. There's definitely a trap pin here, and they proceeded to trap a nice wide W to the upside, and took this baby long and out at the top of the swing. Right? That's the stuff you'll learn with the high-low drill. And let's now plot the ideal spots to practice the high-low drill. Okay? This is our market maker cycle on a weekly time frame. The same drawing Steve draws for us in the daily actually functions many times on the weekly. All right, so we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we're looking to take on the bottom here. This W is a great place to do a high-low drill. It's a great place to do it at the top of the A. And I oftentimes will say it's okay to take first leg high-low drill because, number one, it's a drill. It's not for real. You're doing this just to acclimate yourself with trading from the extremes. And also because sometimes this first leg is the low of day. They'll come back and hit the second leg. That may not be the low of day. It could be 2 or 3 pips higher off the low of day, but if it's a high-low drill, I'm a competitive guy. I'm going in and I'm going to try to find that low of day. So I encourage first and second legs in terms of just the drill itself. A and V patterns as well. You got a nice top there. 2 legs down here. Get your A top here, come back into the range. Okay, we're trading back into the range at level 1 consolidation. We don't want to do that normally, but for a high-low drill, say you're on at Asia, and you see a false move spike up Asia gap time, then you want to practice the drill, whip out your demo account, and take it. You know, it's literally hours of experience that are going to build up to get you proficient. All right? And our second day, level 2, take that back into the range if you want. Same thing, W on our level 2 going up into our week end. All right? M, late in the week, you're going to pull it back into the range. Great place to grab the high day. I would suggest grabbing on both. There's no reason to pull 50 from 2 locations. Again, it's a drill. You're trying to get proficient at it. Okay, so just to recap, the timings for this is 2 to 5 a.m. East Coast time. That's New York time. And the New York session, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's your window to take this drill. And just look at that. This is the CHFJPY from the 16th of January. And I can go back, and you've seen this drawing before, and boy, didn't she paint perfectly. I mean, that's just exactly how Steve draws it. So this stuff does happen, and he's not delusional. And my first experience with a high-low drill was in 2011, February, in Orlando. It was my first class, and I threw on the recording while I was taking these trades. I think I was working just the Euro USD, trying to get a high entry short in there. Of course, you do see the M, and this is a first leg. As I had the recordings on of a class that he gave in December, he actually went into spreading your trade out across the various pairs because you don't know which one they're going to work that night. Okay, so I went in the CHF cross, the J cross, and the odd cross. All right, got a lot of motion on the odd, not so much out of the J, a ton out of the EU. All right, and the big point to be made in this was my first night of doing the high-low drill, doubled this account. I had never done that. That's a completely new experience for me. Don't want to belabor that too much, but needless to say, I came to class the next day pretty perky. All right? Wish you guys the same. This is an example of just a trade. This is grabbing a high on the CAD late in the day. All right? 1, 2, 3 pushes up. We're a couple pips from the high. Roll my stop to break even once it drops into nice gains. Start popping out the orders. Nice trade. And I'll just show one more and then we'll get on with content. Not that this isn't content, but so this is a third leg up. Right here's your second leg. As the second leg is pulling back, I'm starting to add orders on. And then sure enough, they give me that last rise towards 11 a.m., which is, you guys that are spending time with us in the DMR, you know, I enjoy that time frame on the CAD, and we talk about that a lot. Start piling them on, piling them on, piling them on. The last order I get up here, I try to get my heaviest order on. Right? In this case, the high day was 102.30. The top entry is 102.244, which is a 5.6 pip difference. So 5.6 from the high day. All right. So, Mr. Baruch, sorry, dude, it's possible. All right. So I use manual scale ins and heavier lot size at the high day. All right. Tons of pushes up too if you guys are interested in that. All right. So let's continue on here. Economics, the science of explaining tomorrow why predictions you made yesterday didn't come true today. Yeah, all those economists are just stupid. Now, do you really buy that after taking this course? All right. I don't buy that anymore. All right. That is, the game is between the market makers and the fleas. Observe the actions of both and be in the market, but not of it. Okay. Sorry I had to take your quote there, buddy. It's all right. Okay, when you guys come up in the end of June, 3 weeks from now, this is Stevens Institute, lovely view of Manhattan. And I've done a little graffiti on the sign, not really, in Photoshop, but I called it Steve's Institute of Technology with Market Maker Method down below it. So this is where we were going to have the class. It's a lovely view. So since we've rushed through the high-low drill, I figured we walk outside, take a little break. We'll talk about this deep stuff while we're sitting out listening to the birds, having a smoke or two, and we'll ask the question. So when Steve speaks of market makers inducing traders to take positions, what does he really mean? What is this word induction? What is it to induce? A recognized authority in an area can merely make a statement, and instantly thousands of fleas just go with it. All right? This was called on the forum. I love to call the gold trades. For some reason, I got mojo with it. Not sure what it is. I just love this stuff. So, throw up Bloomberg. Soros sees gold prices on brink of bear market. I didn't even think about gold. It wasn't until I actually see this coming from this recognized authority, and they're starting to induce traders, that I go to a gold chart, and what do I see? Oh my goodness. Here's where that news article came out. Pinned to the low on a daily chart. All right, so this is like a seasonal low down here. And this goes way back. It came right to the low, busted beneath it, closed above it, formed a pin. All right, is that amazing? I mean, I don't know. I'm amazed by it, and it's happened 3-4 times since then. You can go on the forum and see all that stuff. It's fantastic. 2 days later, shift bar, sorry about your luck. We're taking this north, even though we've induced all these fleas that took the short based on the news call, right? So, ouch, even more for those guys, and real big ouch for everybody who's been stopped out. All right, that's the way they roll. That was an inducement short using the news to trigger the pattern on a daily chart. Right? Big time frames are important. Yeah, that's how it works, Randy. All right, how can this happen over and over and over again, and the fleas carry on doing it, having not a clue that it's going on? Not just any fleas, but hedge fund fleas, fleas in fancy suits, and fleas that drive fancy cars. A lot of people getting hit by this stuff. I know people, big, ouch, they go the wrong way. They have all their trend lines and garbage on their screen and all that, and you just can't talk to them. It's just, try to invite them to the class, come out, hang with us, and across from the city in Jersey and listen to it. Some do, some don't. You do your best, and that's all you can do. But you can't really deal with people that aren't on the inside of this particular knowledge base, right? I think Steve mentioned that. All right, so what is it which is inside us, which seems to leave the majority of us able to be induced like this over and over? What, again, is this thing called induction? All right, here's a quote from Moby Dick, a great book. Little kind of a sidebar here, but it relates to the question about inducement. And it says, in this world, shipmates, sin that pays its way can travel freely and without a passport, whereas virtue, if a pauper, is stopped at all frontiers. Herman Melville from Moby Dick. Very interesting statement. That's when people ask, well, if the market makers run it, how come everybody isn't in on it, and wouldn't somebody know? Well, that's your quote. That's your answer. All right, so let's take the American Heritage Dictionary for a second, and let's look at the electrical component of induction, because I think it's very, very relevant for our emotions, for our brain, which is an electrical instrument, and even the computers in front of us. I mean, it's electricity everywhere. Trading is electricity, right? So what is this induction? The generation of electromotive force in a closed circuit by a varying magnetic flux through the circuit. Okay, so magnets, what do? They push and they pull, they attract and they repel. They don't necessarily need to touch an object to have influence over the object, to persuade it to do something. All right, it's also the charging of an isolated conducting object by momentarily grounding it while a charged body is nearby. All right, so you don't necessarily have to touch it to get it moving. All right, let's look at a little electronic device. It's an induction wand. It's inducing a current. Okay, doesn't have to touch it. All right, we can compare it to a puppet. Okay, that's an interesting metaphor, but it doesn't quite nail it on the head. Although for sure we can talk about what makes you think management is trying to manipulate the union rep. A little bit of hammer there. And this is my favorite one. What is it about me that attracts controlling women? He's wearing his little puppet strings. Strings coming off his feet. All joking aside, we try to clip the puppet strings, but really inducement is something more. It doesn't require someone to touch us. Right? Big clue there. We'll read this again. The charging of an isolated conducting object by momentarily grounding it while a charged body is nearby. Okay, it's kind of spooky, but these guys that have been running markets for over 2,000 years, training fleas, did a drawing like this, turn of the century, if not before, at this guy waving his hands, looking deeply into her eyes, little mesmer lines going on there. So inducement is a pretty deep subject if you really think about it. And we're going to simplify it and say induction has characteristics of passive control. The flea so induced may think his actions are his own doing. Okay, so a lot of times we do things that we think is of our own accord. Right? That's a little different. Since it's not direct control, what makes the induction so strong? What are the market makers tapping into that makes them so effective? All right, and enter the drum major. He or she leads the marching band. It's a symbol that we've all seen, okay? And it's based on people's instinct to follow a leader. We're constantly looking for a leader. Yeah, it's funny. Someone put a comment, art of seduction, it's a science. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we can go into that side. I had a drum majorettes from Brazil, but I didn't know if I didn't feel we might have a mixed audience here. It might not have been appropriate, but they're wearing some pretty intense drum major outfits. Anyhow, drum major for little kids. Okay, we've seen the guy that always runs everything. Okay, we like to get on the Skype group to have the really good trader make the calls. You know, we got to hit Steve with 5 million emails when we haven't done our homework to say, okay, where do I get in? Okay, so we're sort of hardwired to look for this guy to lead us. Okay, so they come in various forms. Here's an older style guy with the big pompous hat. Same kind of thing. Carries a big stick. Everybody follows him. Okay, this is a symbol that's been used throughout time that indicates that part of our nature is based on the fact we like someone to tell us what to do. And that goes against everything Steve's showing you, because he's saying that these guys are actually going to be doing things the wrong direction. You're going to go against them. All right? And just to take a quick sidebar here, I want you guys to know of a presentation I did which deals with this in a little bit more depth. I can't get into it tonight, but here is the forum. You go to Sunday Sessions Video Archive. All right, and this is one of my first presentations going back, which deals with how the subconscious mind integrates, and a lot of the laws that are involved, a lot of the stuff fleshed out in a bit more detail, and there it is. And I've subsequently renamed it Jim's Subconscious Presentation. All right, that's June 12, 2011 was when that particular Sunday presentation was given, and it goes into why these symbols are so powerful for us. We can take Steve's class 3, 4, 5 times, and yet we can't go in the right direction. We're induced. The stuff works against us even if we know it. Okay? For you guys that need that extra little bit of information, it's there for you. All right? Go take a look at that when you need to. And sometimes these drum majors come in threes. Makes sense. Then it goes back into our folk cultures. There's always this guy at the head that's leading everything. Okay? Sometimes they can get flamboyant. Sometimes they can go by the name of Jim Cramer. How is that guy on TV all these years making the false calls? All right? And bam, they end up kicking you in the face, and that's kind of the way it goes when you follow the drum major. All right? So we basically want to be our own drum major. Okay? And the authority we want to turn to is not that alpha trader that's in our Skype group. It's really not Steve, because he's given you everything you need. And he's brought in his core teachers to as well show our particular way of looking at it, which is different. Okay? We're not going to all be the same because we're going against something that is pretty intense. So there's not many wildebeest out there running away from the herd, is basically what we're saying. Few and far between actually run away from that stuff. So the big statement here is homework is the authority. Okay, once you've internalized the method, once you've gotten all the information from Steve and all of us in the DMR and everybody that you respect as a fellow trader, eventually you're going to want to get your authority from homework. Okay, I could say R&D, whatever it is, you want to get your authority from the charts. Very, very big point. Those guys that actually do the work and create the brain cells of recognition of the setups have the authority from actual charts. They no longer turn to another person. And guess what? They'll send Steve a chart and say, hey, I see this, I see this. And they'll say, oh, that's cool. Can you share it with everybody? Yeah, great. So let's look at this and understand that the rest of the trading world is full of shit. FOS. Say that out loud. I don't mind swearing. It's a swear-safe zone here. So if you must look at news, and I know a lot of you guys are still hooked into that, all right? So let's flip it around. If you must look at news, view it from the standpoint of a market maker and the fact that fleas are so easily trained and induced. Okay? All right, so biologically, we are driven at our core to follow the herd. We can hear Steve's class 4 days in a row. Go out there. The market makers will throw a spike and we'll chase it. Okay, I'm saying it from experience. When I first took Steve's class, I did it. Okay? In some cases, it offers a protection against predators. However, in the case of trading, the predators capitalize off of the instinct. Protect the baby elephant. Okay? You don't want to be as vulnerable anymore. You're going to have to jump out of the herd a little bit. All right? The herd instinct finds its extreme in the stampede. Okay? A mindless dash towards some reward or away from some predator. Okay? That's the definition of a stampede. All right? And let's just be clear here. Animals are not the only creatures who engage in this. Obviously. Enter Walmart. Okay? We've all heard of the Walmart stampedes, yes, of course. And this is exactly why momentum candles work and will continue to work. Same exact psychology going on here. All right? We've heard of the Black Friday Walmart stampede. Worker killed. Woman suffers possible miscarriage. I mean, this is human nature. It's real, okay? And it's not just Walmart, guys. It's Target. Black Friday shoppers stampede Target. Look at that. Okay, this is a false momentum shift candle here. Macy's, same thing. These people are going nuts. Group psychology. Yep, that's what it is. Even Oxford Street in London, they open the doors. These people run in as if all this stuff is going to go away. I mean, really? They can still buy that stuff probably cheaper in 2 weeks, but this is human psychology, right? And this is just folks chasing deals on goods. Goodness gracious. When you get into religious stampedes, it gets even crazier than this. All right? Now we're talking stampede potential. All right, there it is. And Helen brings up the example of tulip mania. Exactly. And we're digging inside human nature to see that, why that's possible, how these guys exhibit it. So This is the sun, and those guys use the lens of the magnifying glass, and they create fire as a result. So now we're talking a stampede. That is a lot of people. All right, so remember this picture next time you see a huge vector to the high after 3 pushes, and you have hesitation going short at the highs, because chances are that there are thousands of traders getting induced long by that spike. Now, I could just sit and roll this back and forth and say that, to me, this is the essence of Steve's stuff. And until you can get over yourself and realize that there's a ton of people that are going the wrong way in this business, and that you can get in going the right way, just really, all I can say to you is keep doing the high-low drill until you can get it, because eventually you're going to see it. And this is exactly the truth. There are thousands of people on the other side of your trade at that minute they throw that last third spike. All right, and this is interesting and informative. How to stop stampedes, lessons from India. And it says, stampedes have been common to the populace of India, with most occurring during religious gatherings. New studies in pedestrian dynamics now say that to prevent a stampede, one needs to spot the building pressure of a dense moving crowd. So what are we doing when we're looking at the levels? We're spotting pressure of a dense moving crowd. No difference at all. Okay, and the key point down here, the decisive factor leading to a stampede was not average or local crowd density, but pressure, which is speed variance multiplied by density. I read that and I can only think of one word, and that is vector, Hector. All right, vector is that fast last third push that gives us the indication that a trap is in progress. The wrong direction, it's an inducement the wrong way. Sorry about this lady down here, didn't mean to, no offense intended to anybody, any religion, any group, nothing. It has nothing to do with that. This is just human psychology we're looking at. All right. Then you have just plain stupid stampede, or stampede stupid, as I put here. What is this guy thinking? All right, all these people cheering him on. Humans, they're not going to change. All right. So we have determined that the pain of doing the high-low drill is going against our inborn instinct to go with the pack. And, of course, this lady, she's doing the high-low drill. She's walking away the other direction. She's got a little halo over her head. God bless her. She's going to make some money in this business. All these people are going to lose. Just the way it goes. Okay, we're in China, and entering at the extremes of the range is like going this way. The crowd is all going this way. That hurts. I'm not supposed to go that way. I'm supposed to go with the crowd. So entering at the extremes is going away from everyone else. And extremely painful the first few times you do it. All right? And now you look at this picture, you say to yourself, how do you feel looking at this picture? And I got to stop for a comment here. Jim, a strayed wildebeest will be easy prey for a stalking lion. Yes, indeed. Very true. All right? So how do you guys feel about this little girl out here on the street all alone, sitting here? Feel anything about that picture? Does it bring up any emotions? I like the boots. All right, you guys are too worked in by Steve to get this. If you were fresh on a DMR, I'd get the innocent. Yeah, okay. She's hot. Oh, I'm not going to repeat that comment. All right. It's all good. Okay, so I feel when I looked at this picture, I felt concern for her. I was like, oh, she's alone. All right? This little kid out on the street alone. Okay? And that is because from the time we were little children, we were told that it's dangerous to wander off alone, away from the herd. Okay, so there's another energy that's building inside of us that the market makers exploit. And here is a beautiful exploitation of fleas that swim in water. Same principle, essentially. All right, she's a market maker, and off they go. All right. One of my favorite educators, very interesting when you read his material and begin to unwind out of the educational induction portion of your inducement potential, is his particular quote, which says, when you take free will out of education, that makes it schooling. All right, John Taylor Gatto was a 7th grade teacher in New York City, got really pissed off at the word schooling, actually went and looked up the definition and was like, whoa, that's weird. That is fish schooling, it's crowd control, it's training fleas. All right, he didn't like the word schooling, he liked the word education. All right, so that type of education makes dead meat for the market makers of people that are trained to essentially follow that leader at the wrong time and not think for themselves. We're asking you to think for yourself, okay? We're trying to bring the free will back into education, okay? God forbid. All right, one of his greatest books is Weapons of Mass Instruction. Fantastic stuff. If you are so inclined to dig into the psychological reasons that inducement candles work, this is an interesting place to start, because in our education, just so happens to be a key place where we have information that the market makers are leveraging, and this is pretty much it in one slide. Dude, this is not a teaching, this is crowd control. Teacher sitting over little Johnny with the bullhorn. Okay, this is it. All right, bells ringing, standing in line, doing all this kind of stuff. You know, God bless teachers, God bless education. We're not ripping that. We're just saying that a portion of it is to get people in line and to school when the market maker tells them to. All right. So our prime objective in learning this is to stand back from it all. Okay. The idea is that the market makers have most people going the wrong way due to these influences. Okay? And the goal is to recognize both participants and to understand how they both behave, and then to fearlessly act on that understanding. Okay? And of course, we have the shark, i.e. the market maker, and you must know what all these little fishies are, and schools of fish, i.e. the impressionable herd that the market makers are playing with, inducing them the wrong way, pulling it against them. So both of these participants are going on in this equation. Yes, the market makers control everything, but what are they doing? They're looking for the money. They're looking to get these fish all going in one direction, and then they rip it away, and old Sharky goes off with all their food. All right, so it actually is an interplay between these two forces. Okay, and then this is the serious market maker effect student who's just taking the time to observe. Sit back, look at the candles, observe what the market maker is doing, see what the little fishies are doing, you know, watch the shark do his business, and eventually you'll get it. Okay, then we get into the next portion of our broadcast here, and that is a quote by a famous fencing instructor, and that is that he considered fencing to be physical chess. Strategy and technique often matter more in fencing than athletic ability. So I'm going to dig into the metaphor of fencing for a second to look into strategy. All right, and all this stuff, yeah, I could be throwing charts up, but you guys had 4 hours of charts and all that. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but it's kind of easy on the brain to back off and look at these bigger ideas to simplify exactly what Steve's talking about. Okay, we know we've seen the market maker cycle, and he says those that rip that thing inside out, understand it, are the ones that are going to be able to trade excellently in relation to it. So let's back off and simplify this entire business. Okay, and I pulled an interesting strategy from a 7th century fencing master. It's totally applicable to trading. In fact, it's applicable to applying Steve's method, and that is Capoferro, a 17th century fencing master, was very clear that fencing is the art of defense. The first and foremost thing to remember is to defend yourself. I didn't know that about fencing until I started researching this stuff for this class. I found it to be incredibly interesting. And I won't read this entire thing out loud, but basically it's use your feet, move out of the reach of the opponent's lunge, back off, and allow him actually get into your territory. And then all you have to do is sweep his sword away and strike. So you're waiting for him to make the move. All right, what do these things sound like? Okay, the top portion sounds like have a solid risk strategy, the defensive posture. The bottom one, sing it, Steve. I'm going to the candy shop. I ain't trading until the hit this stops. Okay, you're waiting for him to cross over into your measure, and then you pop back with a stroke based on his move. You allow him to move first. All right, so fencing has this in there. And of course, you don't want to be that guy, which is rushing the trades, getting in too early. We all know about that. And the high-low drill we've already covered handles this component down here. Now let's look at a solid risk strategy. Okay, let's look up here, and let's look at a solid defined risk strategy. Any of you guys that have done fencing know it's a pretty technical sport, and they have electronics on them which actually can tell when the foil hits, and so they can actually keep score. A lot of precision in this game here, but remember, market makers have been perfecting their game for a long time, going back over 2,000 years. And our first best defense, this is absolutely without question, our first best defense is to improve our skills in demo. Okay, I'm going to take a little sip of water on that. All right, not enough emphasis on demo. It's extremely important because you can work aspects of your game. All right, a lot of you guys want to fire into live very quickly. Yes, there are people doing it. Yes, you can perhaps be a one-hit wonder in 2 weeks, go and kill this thing, but I'll tell you, the average is 4 to 6 months to turn the corner to actually get a full, absolute game-changing plan together to attack the Forex market. All right, so let's not underestimate demo here. All right, and this is just so true, it's not even funny. If there's a big difference to you between trading live and demo, then you should be trading in demo. Okay? After you truly master demo trading, you realize there is no difference. It's just squiggly lines, a computer, a little click enter. You've got the game so in your mind that it's almost irrelevant if it's live or demo. All right? So I'm going to say it again. It's huge. If there's a big difference to you between live and demo, then you should still be trading in demo. Okay? I know no one's going to listen to me, but that's all right. We understand that. And the question that I beg you to ask yourself is, which is more important to you? 1, I want to make money, or 2, I want to attain mastery at a skill. Big question to ask yourself. It's going to mean everything. All right? And unfortunately, one of them is aspiration, which will open up possibilities. It'll actually allow you to remain enthusiastic the whole time. The other side of that one is greed, which if you take a few hits live, sometimes you'll start questioning Steve and go, what, is this guy nuts? What is he doing? And, it's fun to work with some people and get them back in line with it and have them actually start to get out of the greed and into the aspiration. And they're like, wow, this stuff really does work. Right? People turn the corner all the time as soon as they lean over towards the aspiration polarity and get away from the greed side. It's not exactly something that's teachable. You kind of have to experience both sides of this. Okay, Steve looks like he can put trades on at the high of day. I listened to Jim's presentation. All I got to do is just go in short CAD at 11 a.m. New York, and I'm going to make millions. Well, that might be greed speaking. And okay, I'm going to work on my demo. I'm going to work on my entries. I'm going to work on my risk management, each independently. I'm going to allow myself to build some equity, have some good equity curves, and then I'm going to go live. That's the aspiration portion. All right? And interesting that this word aspiration sounds a lot like inspiration or breathing. All right. So Steve's rule of thumb, which I don't think he's presented yet in this class, but he presented throughout the live classes that I've attended, is that when you can double a demo account, you're ready to go live. And I could say that even if you double a demo account, maybe you want to do it a couple times to make sure it's not a fluke. Sometimes you can go super heavy, go way outside of any sort of determined risk, and get lucky one time. I'd say you want to make sure that you are really solid with that double. Okay, it's based on the principles that we've been shown. You can send Steve a trade or Carr a trade, and they'll say, yep, that's a market maker Forex trade right there. It's a clear M, a clear W. There are aspects about it that are systematic. You've traded with a system and doubled the demo, not just throwing paint or threw your foil over at the other guy and hit him in the face. Lucky random shot. All right, so when you're doubling a demo, you're ready to go live. Super important. That is because when it comes time for the real battle, you'll actually be able to trade strong. Okay? And fencing is an amazing sport. It's totally different when you're training once you get in there, and it's balls to the wall. Competitive, it changes. All right, and that's the same thing as being battle ready, or a pilot who's taken the time to internalize his instruments in foggy conditions. Something comes up, a pilot has so much training that they know exactly what they're going to do. It's excellent. Marielle asked if I've ever fenced. No, but my girlfriend was an actual state champion. I think she actually went on to the Olympics. Scholarship in fencing. I picked her brain a little bit for this presentation because, well, she looked pretty hot in this fencing outfit back when she was a fencer. But anyhow, I like to jump around and keep metaphors fluid because I think it helps us look at this from a lot of different points of view. And end of the day, it's you against the other guy. It's us against the market maker. When you really get your game in socket, you're actually observing the market maker and the fleas. You're actually watching both of these guys have a duel. And you're taking trades as an objective personality outside of the game. All right? It's a real huge point. You're no longer invested long or short. You're really looking at it as the market maker and the flea. You got the flea to jump. Now the market maker got his foil out of the way. Market maker's about to hit him. This guy's airborne. He's gone. All right? No question. Here's your victor, because he's going to come back with a jab, and he's going to take him out. All right, we got a quick question from Joe. Nice presentation question, Jim. How did you overcome your attachment to money? Boy, I'd keep you on for hours. That goes back to my previous career. I kind of, interestingly enough, I just explained it, where you back yourself out of the situation so you're not really a participant. And almost you convince yourself that money's not on the line, and you see the market makers inducing the fleas, the wildebeests, whatnot, and you observe them from a distance. And, oh, by the way, my account equity is growing. I guess it would be the section I'm about to get into, which answers it perfectly, which is risk control. When I can control my risk, when I know exactly how much I'm going to lose, when I've taken the time to map that stuff out before I put a live trade on, then I'm not going to get frazzled, and it's no longer about the money. It's about the game. It's about the skill. So I'm going to say that the real answer to your question, Joe, is that to get money out of my mind, I form a super clear risk strategy and stick with it without question. John is asking what my background is. I wrote music for TV commercials for 21 years. I induced people to buy shit they don't need. I used music to help hypnosis, just, get the masses to do it all. I watched it from the inside. I saw how inducement works. I became an expert at hypnosis without knowing it. An expert at group hypnosis, using sounds, using music to really create a picture. God bless them. They're great people in the business. It's a wonderful thing. Advertising is in nature. Flowers advertise. The trees advertise. Nature is constantly advertising. Striped fish are advertising. Frogs that are colored bright pink in the middle of the Amazon because they're going to kill you are advertising that they're dangerous. Nothing wrong inherently with the business. Nothing wrong with it. However, 21 years, I won a bunch of awards, got to the top, and decided I wanted to do something else. It was working with computers, so I was able to look at charts at the same time and lose a crap load of money before I met Steve in the process. But to answer your question, that's